Five, four, three, two, one. All right, welcome, guys. This is a podcast about some things. The number one podcast for some things, many things, and all things. I'm your host, GEO, and co-founder of the podcast, Aman Khalid. As always, I'm here today with my two co-hosts, friends, group chat extraordinaires, compadres, FSMS football alums, the Naja boys themselves, Coach Corey Lawson, who you can follow at Coach_Corey_Lawson, and Andrew Jr. Akunna, aka AJ, who you can now follow at _AJ Takeover. How are you guys feeling today?
Feeling good. Brand new week. Got some big news in sports this week, so we're ready to dig into it.
You guys ready?
Yeah, I feel like with the rising cases, it's a lot to talk about. So lots to distract ourselves with.
For sure, for sure. Speaking of which, I did mention the socials. You guys can follow the website. I'm going to post it up right here for video purposes, right here at a website about somethings.com. You can also follow us on YouTube. We have our first episode up. This podcast is going to be the second episode, and we're probably just going to drop it this Thursday or Friday. I don't know, whenever I get time to edit. You can also listen to us on Anchor, Spotify, all your favorite, podcasting applications. I think it's coming to Apple Podcasts soon, so you can listen to it there. And I guess with that being said, let's get right into it. All right, we're about to jump into our first segment. It's a big one, a surprise. Cameron Newton signed with the New England Patriots over the past few seasons. The Blinn Community College alum, the former Heisman Trophy winner, the 2015 NFL MVP, Cameron Newton, who has, admittedly taken a step back in production over the past few years. And while many point to the 2000 MVP season by Cam Newton and the subsequent 15-1 run by the Carolina Panthers as a fluke, other points to the lack of production and the result driven ultimately by the untimely demise of Cam Newton's throwing shoulder. As a result of these lackluster results over the course of the past 4 years, the Carolina Panthers opted to release the former cornerstone of the franchise in favor of building with a young coach and Baylor's own Matt Rule and former Saints backup Teddy Bridgewater. On the opposite spectrum is the New England Patriots, who have seemingly put a close, to their 2-decade-long span by letting Tom Brady go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers of all places, while Tom's decision to leave the blizzardly hellscape that is New England in favor of a sunny, cozy retirement spot in Tampa, Florida, which was an obvious decision. The New England Patriots path moving forward was not so obvious. And for months, Patriot fans speculated that Jarrett Stidham's McLennan Community College, Texas, he's also a Texas guy, so we got to shout out the McLennan Community College. We thought he was going to be the answer to the GOAT size problem, but as of this week, Cam Newton, he took that role. And so Cam Newton took a 1-year deal, an incentivized bound deal that's reportedly worth up to $7.5 million for 2020. And I'm just going to note, relevant to the conversation, Richard Sherman, Corey's favorite, added his opinion to this take. Of course, the guy who negotiated his own contract, bet on himself, and won, called the contract, quote, disgusting, while pointing to other non-MVP quarterbacks who are making way more money than Cam Newton, who took almost like 4 months to sign this contract in the first place. So I'm just going to ask you guys straight up, was Richard Sherman right? And what are your thoughts on the Cam Newton signing?
So I guess I'll start it off. I guess we'll start with the Richard Sherman comment on the contract. The thing is, yes, I do love Richard Sherman. Yes, I do appreciate that he bet on himself with his contract. I think he's got to understand that Cam Newton is doing the exact same thing. At the end of the day, I can't say the contract's disgusting unless I know, did Cam have other offers from other teams? Was this his only offer? What were the negotiations like in New England? If I don't know that context, I can't really say the contract's disgusting. To me, what it sounds like is Cam, much like Richard Sherman coming off an injury, Cam's coming off an injury, and he has to bet on himself. If he does really well in New England, sky's the limit in terms of contracts and future seasons.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think what Richard Sherman was actually pointing to, I mean, it's a fair point that, as like it's reported in the CBS article, people like Chase Daniel are kind of having better deals. Like career backup quarterbacks have better deals than him. But which Richard Sherman is conveniently ignoring here is that Cameron Newton's, I don't know why I keep calling him Cameron. That's my bad. But Cam Newton's throwing shoulder is absolutely done. And I have, good word from medical officials around the community. I'm not going to say who, I do have some connection. Inside Connect. My sources say that Cam Newton's shoulder is really, it's not there. It's not,
oh my God,
it's not good. So while I respect Richard Sherman, and obviously he did bet on himself, he did take that contract. He was his own agent. And so it's kind of weird for me that he doesn't understand that Cam Newton did take that type of deal. It is like a Ryan Tannehill type of deal. We can discuss the formalities a little bit, but yeah, go ahead.
But I mean, again, I go back to the context. What if we find out, which we'll never find out because it won't be released, but what if it gets leaked that he had an offer for $14 million with, I don't know, the Cleveland Browns, or pick another team. Like what if there's another team offering him 15, 16 million, but he made a decision, I want to go compete for a championship, and this is what New England's offering me. So in the absence of knowing if he had other offers, I don't know if we can sit there and really dig into conspiracy theories.
Yeah, I have to piggyback on that, because if I'm being honest, I'm not surprised with New England picking up Cam. I knew Belichick was waiting on one of these guys, to have one of those guys on a deal just like this. I feel like in reality, like Cam probably definitely had better deals on the table, and it was because Belichick leveraged the New England Patriots and was like, "This is all we're going to give you, and you're still going to come here." So I feel like that's more likely of a scenario.
And you know why I can see that as well is because it's a 1-year contract. So it's not like he signed this quote unquote disgusting contract for 5 years. This is clearly a guy who's betting on himself, right? So he signed for 1 year. I guarantee you, if the Patriots make playoffs, he's not playing for $7 million next season, no matter where he's at. That you can guarantee. It reminds me of Sherman. It also reminds me of Flacco back in the day when he bet on himself, won the Super Bowl, and the next thing you know, Flacco's the highest paid quarterback in football. You go to New England, you make playoffs, maybe win a playoff game, hit the free market, teams will line up.
Who's beating them in the AFC East? Who's beating them?
The defending champs. Oh, the AFC East. Sorry.
Well, I mean, the Bills
have a good roster. Yeah. The Bills have a roster.
I do want to touch on what I was pointing out earlier. You kind of mentioned Joe Flacco. I think the most direct comparison everyone's pointing to is Ryan Tannehill, who just did it with the Titans last year. I mean, they signed him on a 1-year deal. He was the former starting quarterback of the Dolphins, played his way into the starting position, and then played himself into a big contract this offseason. So I think for Cam Newton, he saw that and said, I can do the exact same thing with the New England Patriots and probably set myself up for a championship run. And I mean, for the Patriots, it works out for them because obviously it's not, an expensive contract. It's not something they're tied to long term. And they're most likely going to have the first option at him in free agency if it does all work out. So, but yeah, you did mention who is beating them. Do you think the Patriots are better suited, Corey, for this year than they were last year with Tom Brady?
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to say no. The reason I'm
That's my series, sorry.
We're going to edit that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say no. And I'm going to say no, even though Brady, yes. Was he old last year? Yes. Was he prime, peak Brady last year? No, he wasn't. But, and Aman knows I always say this, a lot of quarterback is not just making throws. A lot of quarterback is pre-snap. A lot of quarterback is knowing our offense and making sure we get to the line of scrimmage. We see a certain look from the defense. Can my quarterback switch to the right play? I'm not saying Cam can't do that in a vacuum. I am saying Tom Brady, with 15, 16 years in that specific system, was better able to do that than what I think Cam will do. So then you add in Cam's shoulder, and for me, I've got to say they were better off with Tom Brady. They had a guy who had been in their system for 15 years. Even if he had half an arm, I'd still say they were better off with Brady last year.
I mean, you're obviously the guy we come to in the group chat for scouting purposes in football. So I do kind of want to get, your detailed take on Cam Newton's fit in the Patriots offense. Like where do you think his strengths lie? Where do you think his weaknesses lie? Yeah, just give us your take.
So I guess I'll start with my biggest concern I have for Cam in the New England offense. And for the listeners, you can literally go pull up film of Brady, then pull up film of Cam Newton. What you're going to see is Brady's a bit more of what we call a rhythm passer, meaning everything in that offense is based on timing. Quarterback, it's a 3-step drop balls out, 5-step drop balls out, and the receivers know exactly where to be on that 5th step, and the ball's going to be right there. You watch Cam Newton, he's a good quarterback, great quarterback, don't get me wrong, but when you watch him play quarterback, especially on passing downs, it's not the same kind of rhythm. It's a bit more of drop back in the pocket, kind of sit, wait for things to develop, and then his big arm can kind of make a play happen. But the reason that's a concern is one side is going to have to budge, right? In New England, they like everything to be very timing-based, very on time, 3-step, ball out, 3-step, ball out, no hitch, 5-step, ball out. Cam Newton's a bit more of, again, sit back, let things develop, and then trust that cannon arm. One side's going to have to budge. I don't know who that's going to be. So that's my first biggest concern. One thing I like about Cam in New England is right now they don't have a very dynamic offense. They don't have anybody on that offense who's really what you would call a game breaker at receiver, at running back, and certainly they haven't had that at quarterback for a few years. So if nothing else, Cam might bring them that dynamic big play element that they've been missing in New England for the past couple of years with Tom getting older. So it'll be interesting. I want to see, again, does Cam become more of a rhythm passer, or does New England just change the entire system to fit Cam? But the benefit I see is they don't have playmakers on that offense, and Cam, if he's healthy, is a playmaker.
All right, AJ, I do want to get your take. First off, I'm a little upset nobody's commented on this mustache.
I've been staring at you like, what's different with you?
All right, but AJ, I do want to get your thoughts. All right. So we know your hashtag Black QBs only, right? Come on, for sure. So this situation Cam's going into, he's going into Boston, who's, for the past 2 decades, they've had Tom, right? The stereotypical white quarterback, the guy that we love, the guy that they love, admire, and worship. And now they're going to Cam Newton, the guy who was, receiving complaints during the 2015 season for dabbing after, scoring touchdowns, which has now become a viral trend for white kids, all over the world, all over the United States. So, AJ, I do want your thoughts on Cam's fit in Boston in general and how this plays into the black quarterbacks moving forward in the league.
Well, I'll definitely have to maybe just say right now up front that that's not going to be a component that helps Cam in re-signing in New England. Like, it's not going to be because of that. It's not going to be because of the fit at Foxborough. Although it could be, I don't know, with the new climate, how things are kind of going these days, maybe the if and when the NFL starts, maybe they'll have their own version of what the NBA is going to try to roll out with their restart in the social messaging in the games and whatnot, and the kneeling. I want to know his opinion on that. Like all those things are definitely going to come into play. So that's going to be interesting to see with that location. But as far as fit play wise, I would have to say that I feel like New England is always going to be running like a low key running team. And because Cam does add that element, I feel like they will have some success. Like he won't be the same passing quarterback Tom was. He's not going to be as accurate. He's not going to be on point. He's not going to catch that passing rhythm Corey talked about earlier. But he may have a different kind of rhythm in his game with the running and the play action, and he can hit a guy 5 yards down and get run for two. And I feel like Belichick will definitely their line is a big plus, and they'll be able to protect him the same way Lamar's protected in Baltimore. But at the end of the day, I feel like his success will ultimately drive him, and I feel like the fans will like him, not love him, but like him.
They'll tolerate him.
Tolerate.
That's what I'm saying. Does nobody have any like cultural concerns? Like this guy was literally chastised for dabbing after touchdowns, and now he's going to New England, where I mean, like this. I mean, even with Belichick, right? Like the mentality is always next player up, right? One guy is not bigger than the team, and I mean, this has been reputation. I mean, fair or not, I don't know if that's fair or not, but I mean, do we not have cultural concerns here?
But here's the thing. That's where I go back to. For me, the big theme is which side is going to have to adjust. Just like we talked about when it comes to the passing game, with the culture, who's going to adjust? Because, again, like you said, in New England, it's team, team, team. Nobody's a superstar. Everyone's part of the team. Everyone gives vanilla press conferences. You don't bring attention to yourself. Cam is not that. At least historically, he hasn't been that. Now, go ahead.
I think he can be that. I think
right. So that's what I was going to say. I was going to say next is historically Cam has not been that. Now, you could argue maybe he's 32 now. He's coming off some injuries. He might view this as this is my shot to get one last big paycheck. Yeah. Cam might budge and be just a bit more of a quote-unquote cog in the New England system to get the big payday. We've seen Ocho Cinco in New England. We've seen other big receivers, Randy Moss, come to New England and fit into the culture. So Cam would not be the first big personality to get to New England.
One thing about Cam that I feel always gets lost in terms of how he is perceived is how hard-working he is. I feel like that doesn't get highlighted enough. I mean, he does his own highlighting on his own promo vids on Instagram. But yeah, I feel like Belichick saw that. I feel like his work ethic is definitely not to be overlooked, especially in that professional environment, especially in that locker room. I feel like whatever needs to happen on the field is going to, because his work is going to let it play out. And I feel like a lot of, he was definitely kind of loud and boisterous and so forth in Carolina. But Carolina, man, they work that guy to the bone. So it's hard not to feel that way when you're doing everything on offense.
I get that.
Yeah, he won't have to do it. He's going to see everybody pulling their weight, and he feels like, okay, bet. Like, I don't have to do everything. I don't have to be that guy. I don't have to have that ego anymore. I can just play, work hard, do my thing, get paid, hopefully, at the end of the season.
Yeah. So are we sure he's going to look around and see everyone else on that offense doing their part? I mean, are we sure? Because I watched that offense last year. I'm not quite sure. And so, like, a point I was going to make, too, about going back to the whole, like, why do some teams like to be such rhythmic passing teams? Well, it makes it easier to complete passes. Like, you don't need to have receivers that are incredible. If we know, dude, as soon as I make my cut, the ball's right there, I don't have to get as much separation. So my question is, if they're going to play more a Cam Newton style of play, could we see some new receivers come to New England? I mean, are the Patriots done recruiting guys? Could we see maybe an Antonio Brown come back to New England? Could we see and OBJ get traded to New England. Just some guys
Just
who
about
can
to
win.
ask.
Yeah, just some guys who can win one-on-ones deep down the field. Because if you ask me, if Cam's passing the ball, well, if he's healthy passing the ball, I want to use that big arm. So if we get some stud receivers down the field,
it seems like a second season type of situation. See what Cam is today, bet on him next season, right?
Right.
I have one last question for you guys, though, before we finish this topic up. What are your thoughts on Belichick putting an end to Cam's little typing thing? Like, do you think we're going to see that anymore? Or please, God, please put it. Like, that's my only hope. Please take this away. God, please, I need this. It's the worst thing in sports. It's the worst thing in sports.
God, if I was a gambling man, I think Cam continues to do it. I think he does. I think they open the season something like 3-1, and we get that Instagram post with that caption that we just can't even decipher. It's gonna start. It's gonna say 3-1, and then the rest we won't be able to read what it says. So
it's like one part of me definitely wants Cam to always be Cam, one way or another. But another part of me is just like you're not helping yourself. I need you to see this. You're not helping yourself, and it's tough.
All right. I'm taking my talents to South Beach. Words that shocked the world in 2011 and which presence still gravitates around the NBA today. ESPN recently dropped an article detailing LeBron's The Decision, a spectacle that occurred nearly a decade ago in which LeBron shockingly broke the hearts of Clevelanders by choosing the vastly superior Miami franchise on national television. In the article, author and LeBron specialist, I don't even know what else to call him, he's just LeBron guy, Brian Windhorst, you guys know who I'm talking about, details many new details of the spectacle that was The Decision. And I'm just going to tell you guys some interesting tidbits. You guys have probably saw them on Twitter or whatever. They're definitely been going around. But first off, and I think most importantly, Bill Simmons, woof, he's been having a rough week. On top of just like getting pounded for not having diversity in the ringer and any of his podcasts, and just like not taking any fault for it, not saying anything whatsoever. Actually just saying the opposite of what he should be saying. Details came out that he actually stole this idea from, I don't know why people are saying he made the idea. He stole this idea from someone in his mailbag who pitched the idea that LeBron should make his free agency decision on national television, in which then Bill Simmons took that and then pitched that to LeBron's team, who then took that to Bill Simmons pitched that to ESPN. ESPN then took that to LeBron, who didn't include Bill Simmons in the process, and then Bill Simmons subsequently criticized LeBron's decision, calling him a bunch of things. I forgot specifically. I think like crybaby or something like that. I don't know. A bunch of yikes things. Among other interesting tidbits were really Chicago Bulls related. This article is really hurtful to the Chicago Bulls organization, rightfully so. I think The Last Dance kind of highlighted how bad the Chicago Bulls organization kind of is regarding free agency and, just all sorts of things. So an interesting tidbit was that Joakim Noah actually made a phone call to LeBron trying to recruit him the week before making the decision. And LeBron did not return that phone call. So people are saying in this growing beef that happened during LeBron's time in Cleveland. D Rose also made a pitch, but the big three felt that it lacked enthusiasm. And then if you recall, a few years later, Carmelo Anthony was thinking about coming to Chicago, and D Rose just refused to pitch him on coming to Chicago. So I guess it's kind of, details in the pudding or whatever the expression is. Other details were that the Bulls couldn't make three superstars work, so they had a trade lined up to send Luol Deng to the Clippers. and another team I kind of forgot. And then there was details about how Wade put on a Chicago Bulls jersey that said number 3, and he had this hype feeling about coming back home, and that Bulls officials believed that Bosh and Wade were going to come to Chicago, and it all fell through. So obviously, I have a lot of feelings because this is very Chicago Bulls related. But I just kind of wanted to get your guys' thoughts of how the decision changed the way you view the NBA and how, I mean, you kind of view LeBron today.
I'll go first. I definitely had some mixed emotions at the time. As a Braun fan, since he destroyed the Pistons, which I actually like the Pistons, but when I saw LeBron, when he did to the same Pistons that beat the Spurs that I didn't like, or was it the Lakers? Yeah, it was the Lakers. Anyways, um, yeah, I really wanted him to nab one for Cleveland. I really wanted him to be loyal to the city, nab one before he left, but he didn't. And, when it came out with Dan Gilbert, how he treated him, I totally understood why. So I was like, it's time to move on, right? And I definitely, for whatever reason, wanted him to go to New York. Like, that was where I wanted him to go. I felt like that was the place where he could strengthen his career the most and have the most legacy and be the king. Like there was another king, Bernard King. I felt like the whole thing was like ready to just, you know, blow up, right? But yeah, I just, I didn't. But then I realized, when he was at the Heat, uh, how great Pat Riley was and how elite Dwayne Wayne was, and I kind of understood it. It's still really for the first couple of years it didn't really mesh well with me, and that they lost the first time.
Yep.
When they lost that first year, that's when I was like, man, see, this is why I didn't like you. This is why I didn't like you. So yeah, that was that's how I thought.
So in hindsight, in 2020, I agree with the decision, right? Like I always say, outside of sports, there's no field where we say, hey, you can get more money, work with a better team, have a better coach in a better city, and have career advancement. You should not do that. That's only in sports. Any other, if LeBron was a movie star, if LeBron was a lawyer, we would understand, yeah, go to the better firm, have better management around you, and go win. In sports, we don't really allow that. Now, at the time, I had no mixed emotions. I hated the Heat. I hated LeBron. And it's because I'm a very selfish sports fan. So if you go back to 2010, you had a league with parity. It was like the Lakers were defending champs. The Magic were still rocking. The Celtics were still rocking. Cleveland with LeBron was rocking. Miami had D-Wade. So you had a league where it was like, man, anybody can win a championship. For me as a kid, when LeBron made that decision, I felt like my favorite sport was ruined. I was like, wow, the next 4 years are a complete waste. And so I was too immature to see how LeBron made the best decision for himself. I was thinking about me, and for me, I was not happy. I was like, this guy screwed basketball. Screw this guy.
In hindsight, do you think LeBron's decision was, I mean, the decision to leave, obviously, do you think that was the best decision for the league? Like, do you think that decision helped the league more than him staying in Cleveland?
This is a good question. I think in the short term, it clearly helped the league because that Miami Heat team, we all tuned in to watch them play. So the NBA, they got the benefit of we're going to set TV ratings, we're going to sell out stadiums, we're going to be the biggest talk in sports. Like around 2012, 2013, the biggest talk in sports was the Miami Heat and LeBron James. The better question, I think, is long term because now we're in a league where players move whenever they want to. So as fans, rivalries between teams are not really a thing. Seeing one team kind of grow and develop together and get over the hump doesn't happen in basketball anymore. So long term, I think the jury's still out. I would argue long term is probably a bad thing for the league.
I'll have to disagree with those last couple of points, but first I gotta mention that I don't think it was good for the league. I don't think it was as good as it could have been. I really feel like it was a lot of missed opportunity not going to the Kings. I feel like Jim Dolan.
The net? I mean, the Knicks?
Yeah, they pissed money away in that. They pissed money away because
The
whatever they did,
Sacramento Kings or the
that
New York
Knicks team
Kings?
didn't happen. All they need is LeBron. And it's like the Knicks are good. And when the Knicks are good, the NBA is good. Everybody knows this. When the Knicks are good, when New York is good, the league wins. There's more. I mean, Madison Square Garden, are you crazy? Come on, guys. Like, when that place is sold out, it's better for the league. It's just more money.
I'm not denying that, but here's where I get a bit skeptical. Is in Miami, you had Pat Riley in that front office. So it wasn't just LeBron and D. Wade. They brought in Shane Battier, Mike Miller, Ray Allen. If LeBron goes to New York, are we positive they have an actual NBA team around him, or is it just Cleveland all over again? That would be my question.
Yeah, I don't think it's – I mean, it would be nice from a marketing standpoint, but are we sure it's nice from a career standpoint to go to New York? Like, it's just – it's hazard lights everywhere, you know, caution tape. There have been murders in the building. I don't know. There's been a lot of –
My argument was it was a higher ceiling in New York. I get it. I definitely understand.
Sure. I think that was the complaint with Kevin Durant as well, right? Like, he didn't want to go to the Knicks, and a lot of people are saying, well, if you had made the decision to go to the Knicks, you have a lot higher ceiling in terms of legacy. Like, you took people are saying you took the short way out with the Warriors. You know, you signed with the best team in the league. Well, now go to the Knicks, prove yourself, make this team, you know, the best team in the league. But he didn't do that. I mean, LeBron had that similar opportunity. I do have a lot of hard feelings towards the decision, I guess. I do think it was beneficial to the league, so I do disagree with you there, Corey. I mean, obviously, you mentioned player empowerment, so I think that in itself is beneficial to the league because I think now we're getting to see a lot of teams in markets that I guess wouldn't generally be good. I don't know, have a chance, somewhat of a chance, I guess. I think like a team like the Warriors generally wouldn't have had a chance with someone like with Kevin Durant, right? I mean, it's a good city, but the Warriors aren't some like, you know, gigantic franchise, or they weren't some gigantic franchise before the dynasty run. So I think for that reason alone, the decision for player empowerment alone was a good one for the league. But for me personally, obviously, you know, kind of just it ruined my basketball fandom for 4 years. LeBron and the Heat just haunted me because you guys remember the Bulls were supposed to be the next team out of that before that free agency. They had Noah, they had Dang, they had Rose, they had a young Butler, they had they just got Carlos Boozer in free agency, but they just needed one of those guys. It wasn't like they needed two or three. They needed one of those guys. If they had gotten Wade, if they had gotten Bron, if they had gotten Bosh, they were probably winning the championship in 2011. Let's be real. So it really hurts from that standpoint. Other thoughts I have about the decision that I kind of wanted to get follow-up thoughts on. You guys mentioned Dan Gilbert and that letter, Comic Sans letter he sent to LeBron. Probably the most ridiculous document in NBA history, I guess I would put it. It's just ridiculous all around. Other memories I have of it was pre-Twitter, so really interesting time for the rumor mill because I vividly remember being on my laptop and just having to like refresh websites like realgm.com to make sure we get like the latest rumors of who's coming. And I felt like for weeks it was like the Bulls are getting them, and then like the day of it just flipped and they were all on the Heat. And so it really breaks my heart. It still breaks my heart all this time later. So I don't know if I have many other thoughts on it. Do you guys have a follow-up?
I want to quickly touch on when we say that the decision was good for the league, good how? Good in what way, right? Because the question I start to ask is if I run the NBA and I'm looking at financials, let's fast forward the clock 5-10 years. What happens if with all this player mobility, say Giannis leaves Milwaukee, Devin Booker leaves Phoenix, all these young guys, they do the rookie contract with the team that drafted them, and then they take off. Are we still sure this is good for the league? if we have a league where if you're a small market, you literally have no chance because as soon as your draft pick gets of age, he's gone. Are we positive this is good for the league?
I feel like we flipped on this topic. Like I feel like you were the one
I
who
think we
was,
have.
yeah. I feel like I usually am the one who defends small market teams here, but I don't know. I mean, you do bring up an interesting point, right? Like obviously these small markets probably aren't going to get free agents unless it's like the perfect situation like the Warriors were. So teams like Milwaukee really have to work harder to keep guys like Giannis, but I think from a fan standpoint, I think having those bigger teams like the Heat, like the Warriors, like the Lakers now, teams with a lot of good players, a lot of superstar players, people can relate to, all grouped up in one place. Um, I think that in itself is beneficial to just like
Oh, I agree with
marketing
that.
purposes. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it's a give and take, right? Like
Yeah.
obviously LeBron's the decision to leave in itself obviously was big. Making a TV show out of it, I don't know how much the TV show aspect of it was big, but his decision itself was, it's influenced players
It
today.
has. It has. I mean, the great irony of that decision is if you talk to LeBron fans, they're like, well, he would have more rings if not for the Warriors, if not for KD joining the Warriors. Well, whose example do you think KD followed?
Yeah.
KD watched. The great irony is KD watched LeBron go to Miami, get forgiven for it, and then have his legacy still intact. And whether we agree with that being equal or not, I do think it's reasonable to think KD thought it might be equal.
Yeah.
He followed LeBron's example, and now he's the reason that LeBron has 3 rings.
Yeah.
So there's irony there.
Yeah, it's highly unfortunate. I do want to get your final thoughts on this one opinion I had. So the decision obviously was a huge thing in 2011, and we got kind of a glimpse into kind of the full length of Jordan's career and everything that went into Jordan's career, and things like retiring in '93 and stuff like that, his first retirement. Do you guys think the decision is kind of similar in the respect that it was a big moment in LeBron's career, that it like just put eyes on LeBron, similar to Jordan's first retirement, right? Like it was something, either you hate him or love him. It's something that put eyes on him, and for that alone, it kind of it's a part of his legacy, right? Like it's something that built his legacy even more. Like Jordan's retirement wasn't something that was positive. Like right, it wasn't something that we look at as something that he should have done. I guess it's something we just are like we live with. And even with LeBron, like we don't necessarily say it's something that was good to go on national TV and break all these Clevelanders' hearts, but it is what it is, and it sure, I think it impacts his legacy. So I just wanted your guys' thoughts on that.
I'll say like when I look back on this decision, honestly, I didn't even think twice about it. I felt like the whole theme seemed so fitting in that this was definitely the biggest news in the NBA for many years to come, not just this year or next year, but like for however long his contract was. Like this is the news. So the decision being nationally told, I was like, yeah, when is it? Like, like, of course, we need to know. I feel like, you know, if he had more the success, I feel like if he was like 3 out of 4, 4 out of 4, we would look at it as a good thing. We would look at it more positively. We would look at it because, he had those moments with the Spurs, with the Mavs, and those were bad moments. Those were the bad moments of his career. Those were the moments where we look at him and like, those are the series or moments that people use against LeBron. Those are the biggest things they use against LeBron. So I feel like if you had more success there or remove those losses, we look at the decision like, yeah, it was great for player empowerment. He went in there, got 3, 4 rings out of it, out of 4 years or however many years he was, and boom, it's the decision. Yeah, I felt like it was very fitting at the time.
So Aman, I've got to agree with your Jordan comparison. I've always tried to imagine what was it like when Jordan announced his retirement. For our generation, the biggest shockwave in basketball was the decision. I mean, this is also pre-social media, by the way. This isn't like it's not like we see LeBron on Instagram every day, Twitter every day, in his IG story. This is pre-social media. You've got a full network television program, hour-long, basically a documentary, and then you've got LeBron announcing where he's going, and he's going to the Heat. He's joining Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh in Miami. We had never seen anything like this in sports before the decision. So I think it was a legacy-changing moment, and I think for our generation, that was probably the biggest non-basketball moment of our generation.
All right, we're moving on to something a little different, a different arena. Probably not many podcasts are talking about this, but something that's particularly a favorite of our group chat is the world of high school basketball, high school sports, and college recruiting. And there's been some very big news recently in the world of college recruiting. First off, Cade Cunningham, the number 2 prospect in the 2020 incoming class, committed to Oklahoma State, Stillwater, Oklahoma, in November 2019. And recently, as recently as a few days ago, he announced that he was going to stay committed to Oklahoma State in Stillwater, Oklahoma, despite the fact that they've received a ban to play in the NCAA tourney. So no NCAA tourney for him. In his announcement, Cunningham stated that, to be honest, I was this close to picking a different school, but blood is always thicker than water. Go Pokes. If you're curious as to what Cunningham is referring to, Oklahoma State hired Cunningham's brother, Cannon Cunningham, in June 2019. All right, we're going to move on to probably the bigger news. We're going to get to that in a second, but I also want to introduce the second big news that was recently announced yesterday or 2 days ago. I don't even know how to say his high school. Ypsilanti Lincolns. I think I said that right. Imani Bates, the number 1 prospect in the 2022 incoming class, committed to Michigan State as of Monday, June 29, 2020. I read it in my notes. And he is the best prospect since Zion, since Kevin Durant, since LeBron James, okay? And so he's been recruited by Izzo and company since he was an 8th grader. Although seemingly a significant decision, many are wondering whether Bates will ever step foot on the East Lansing campus, considering the push to eliminate the one-and-done rule that keeps high school players from immediately entering the NBA draft. With the league in stutter, the question begs whether Bates will change the landscape of the NCAA or take his talent straight to the league or a G League or international basketball. We don't know. But let's start with first Cade Cunningham. And yeah, did I mention Stillwater, Oklahoma? Has anyone ever been there? I don't think so. So why is Cade Cunningham no option to play in the NCAA tournament, staying in Stillwater, Oklahoma? Corey.
So I have four letters for you. BMOC, big
What's
man
that?
on campus.
Okay.
Big man on campus. Now, you got to understand, everybody on this podcast right now, and probably our viewers, we're mid, upper 20s, maybe early 30s. To us, we sit there and say, well, man, go play overseas, make some money, play for the G League, make some money. You know what I wanted to be at 17, 18 years old?
What?
The big man on campus. the guy on campus at the parties with the ladies, the big guy on campus. So can I fault a guy for saying, look, here's my 2 options. One, I go to Oklahoma State. I only got to really play 30 games, maybe even 25. Okay, after that, semester's over, I'm leaving. The money's not going anywhere. I'll be rich in a year anyway. But right now, I get to be the big man on campus versus go play for the G League. Come on, I pulled up some of these G League teams. You want him to play for the Fort Wayne Mad Ants. You want him to play for the Iowa Wolves. You want him playing for the Delaware Bluecoats, the Maine Red Claws.
Bro, they
Okay,
don't even
that's what you want. You want my man's in Fort Wayne riding a bus, sleeping in cheap hotels when he could instead be the big man on campus. I rest my case.
Yeah, and something you forgot to mention, and I mentioned in the intro, his brother is a salaried coach on staff. This guy has a salary. Like, I
It
looked it
just
up.
gets better
Yeah,
and better, baby.
I looked it up. So his salary is $200K reportedly, but cash bonus salary undisclosed. Cash bonus salary undisclosed. It's under the table. I'm not saying anything. Look, get them checks. We're here for it.
Okay, look, it just gets better and better. This guy for a year gets whatever he wants. Whatever he wants. Any party on campus. Oh, yeah, I guess I'll show up. I guess I'll be there. I guess. Okay, my big bro is on campus and he makes, what, 200K? My big bro makes 200K on campus? No, I'm not in no dorms. I'm not even living in dorms. I have a one bed studio off campus. Okay, so yeah, to me this is an easy decision.
AJ, you've been pretty quiet over there.
I agree with that. Like, it does sound nice to be overseas, which is, I think, the only other option. Being in the D League or G League, excuse me, is I feel like that's the third option. If you're somebody like Imani Bates or Cade Cunningham, you feel me? You the world is your oyster. You can create whatever landscape you want wherever you go, even if it is that one of Fort Wayne or Rio Grande Vipers. That's rep us.
Repping.
Yeah, I feel like with this, as long as you can have enough connections where you're at. I know that what's his name? Imani Bates is from Michigan. So like he does have connections there. He does have family ties like in the city at the very least. So it's like, yeah, I guess these kids want to make sure that they're just doing the most they can for their people as early as they can. And then they go from there.
100%. And by the way, I would add, if the NBA gets rid of one and done and lets these guys go straight to the NBA, then hey, big man on campus is cool. Filthy rich is 20. Filthy rich is 20 times cooler. So if they lift that rule and let them go straight to the league, then hey, forget BMOC. Go get paid right now.
Corey, are you telling us on this broadcast live? Well, we're going to be live right now, but are you telling us that you're not a fan of the Austin Spurs?
So now back up. I don't want to get in trouble now. I have two homies who work for the Spurs, or I think they used to, but I have homies who work for the Spurs. I've gotten free tickets to the Austin Spurs, which, by the way, fellas, if you're looking for a first date idea, man, D-League, G League tickets are cheap. Okay, you're like, hey, baby, yeah, I got you close. I got you real close to the floor. Look, I have friends in the org. Now, that being said, no, I do not care about the G League, D League, A, B, C, D, F, G League. I don't care, okay? Again, you want this guy playing in Fort Wayne? Not happening. Either be on a college campus or be in the NBA. That's the only options that I see.
And Imani Bates' situation is a little different because obviously he's 2 years away. That guy is the best prospect since Zion, since KD, since LeBron. Like we saw with Zion, there are some benefits with stepping onto the college campus in terms of building a brand. So what do you guys think of Imani Bates? Do you think he's ever going to step onto the college campus? What benefits are there to going to East Lansing? What do you guys think of that situation?
Yeah, I do. I think he definitely is likely to at least spend that year there. If not, I'll be surprised. I think it'll have to be a much better option. It'll have to be a much better situation, and I don't see that much like Cade Cunningham's situation. I feel like they're in similar situations, just different parts of the country. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he does go and step his foot on that campus.
I'm going to one-up you. You said unless there's a much better situation. I'm going to call it right now. There will be a way better situation because the one-and-done rule is going to be gone in the next 2 years. So based on his age, I think by the time it's time for him to decide, I think that rule is going to be gone. I think the NBA knows it's a stupid rule. It's a dumb rule. I think people are calling for it to be gone anyway. I think by the time he's ready to decide, it'll be gone. Sorry, East Lansing, you guys already have Magic Johnson. You're not getting Magic 2.0. That kid's going to the NBA.
But what if the NBA doesn't take that step in the next 2 years? I mean, there's always a decision looming with obviously Corona now, and obviously China had a big impact on, or seemingly a big impact on the salary cap. So we might see the NBA kind of slow down on being, super progressive and try figuring out financials before they figure out, league rules, right? So what if he does have to step on the campus? Is there a benefit? Do you think he should take it seriously? Should he even go? I mean, what do you guys think?
So I still think if the NBA is not an option, then your best option is going to a college university. I said that for two reasons. One, we've already talked about, God, why would you go to the G League if you don't have to? So that's off the table. And then B, if I'm 17, 18, me and a lot of 18-year-olds, I don't want to move all the way across the country and be 24 hours away from my family. I just don't. And I think a lot of kids feel the same way. I know they do because most kids go to college in their home state anyway. So yes, he's great at basketball. He's still an 18-year-old. I don't think he wants to go across the globe. That leaves the college university. And like you said about Zion, you go there, you play 30 games, you play extremely well. You could enter the NBA selling jerseys before you ever step on a professional court.
Most definitely. Any final thoughts on the BMOC theory, guys?
No, I feel like Corey covered that pretty well.
Hey, man.
Keep getting them checks.
All I can say, man, is look, when I was a freshman, I was looking around trying to make some friends, hoping I could maybe meet a nice girl. You know what I'm saying? Maybe get invited to a party one time. I was like, can I get invited to one party my entire freshman year? So all I'm saying is if you have the chance to be the big man on campus, hey, man.
Hey, man. Getting laid on a college campus.
Go ahead and make it happen. Go ahead and make it happen, man. You never get to be 18 again, man. Have some fun, man, because a lot of us, freshman year was very scary for a lot of us.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, guys, that is the second episode of a podcast about some things. Thank you guys for listening throughout this entire podcast. As always, you can find us on our YouTube, on Anchor, on Apple Podcasts, on all of the social media platforms at AWAS Things, AWASTHINGS. You can also check out our website, a website about some things. We're going to post some articles, have some new content every week. You can also follow everybody's Twitter. Mine is at _2_ AMANU LLAH. AJ's is _1_ AJ Takeover, and Corey's is at Coach_Corey_Lawson. Do you guys have any final thoughts on the podcast?
Well done, guys. Second one in the books.
I'm going to make an official prediction. New England Patriots with Cam Newton, 10-6. They're going to be tied. They're going to be tied with the Bills for first in the AFC East. They're going to lose the tiebreaker and be the 5th seed, traveling somewhere to open the playoffs. Official prediction: 10-6. 10-6.
Defense, like, come on.
Whose defense? The Buffalo Bills? That incredible defense in Buffalo that's going to stuff the Patriots? I agree.
Hey, what's a second podcast without a bold prediction? That's why we are here. That's why we are doing this podcast, because we don't just want to give our opinions. What's an opinion without a bold take? That's what we do here. So I got to give it up to Corey, because what a way to end this podcast.
10-6.
10-6. That's a playoff berth. We don't know if that's a Super Bowl appearance, though. We don't know if that's in the cards. There's a quarterback in Kansas City that's got some.
Sounds like a wild card.
A wild card.
Anybody else want to make predictions, or are we just gonna bash mine? Anybody want to make a pick?
I don't want to make the pick right now. I think I'm gonna leave it. I think I'm gonna leave it at. All right. I'll give you one. Cam Newton, 10 rushing touchdowns this year.
AJ, any picks?
I would say Cam Newton has his best touchdown interference ratio this year for sure.
I can see it. I just want to say, by the way, I reserve the right to change my mind if they pick up an OBJ, a freaking Antonio Brown, something like that.
Better?
If they pick up a great player, I have the right to change my mind. Right now, 10-6.
Fair enough. As of June 30th at 10:09 p.m., Corey is saying 10:06 for the Patriots. That is the second episode of a podcast about some things. Thank you again for joining us. We are out. Peace.
Adios.